Welcome to the Bite-Sized Bible, where we look at the Bible from a literary point of view and seek to understand the story the Bible is telling. We are in the book of Genesis, and last episode we looked at the lives of Abraham and Isaac, and how Abraham's mission was to be a blessing to the nations around him and show them the one true God. We've been exploring this narrative theme throughout the book of Genesis, that God creates order from chaos, and that when humans learn to listen to the voice of God and obey its call, they become co-creators with him in bringing order from chaos through an act of tikkun olam, or repairing the world. Today we are covering one of my favorite characters in the entire Bible, Jacob, the son of Isaac. But Jacob wasn't the only son of Isaac. Jacob actually has a twin brother named Esau, and before they were born, their mother Rebekah was told this by God about them. "And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Again, we see this narrative theme of the younger sibling being over the older sibling throughout the book of Genesis. When the 2 boys were born, Esau was born first, and he is described as appearing red and hairy. But grabbing onto baby Esau's heel was his brother Jacob's own hand. And that's where Jacob actually gets his name. It means to grab by the heel. It's a Hebrew idiom that can also mean the deceiver or the trickster. And we're going to see how throughout Jacob's life, that name comes to fruition throughout his interactions with other people. One of the first things that we see Jacob do is that he's cooking this big bowl of stew, and his brother Esau comes home after a long day of hunting, and Esau is just starving. He wants whatever Jacob is eating. And here's what Esau said to Jacob. Then Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. This is an example of how over the centuries of translating the Bible into English, we've sort of cleaned up the language a lot. If you've ever read through the Bible, you might feel like everybody kind of talks the same. But that's not true in real life. Everybody has their own mannerisms, their own cadences, their own tones of voice. We all sound different. And if we read this verse back in the original Hebrew, it gives us a lot of insight into Esau's personality, because he doesn't say, "Give me some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." He actually says something closer to this. "Give me some of that red stuff." This insight into Esau's personality tells us a lot about him. We know that he's a hunter, he's an outdoorsman, and the way he talks, he kind of sounds a little bit like a Neanderthal, so to speak. But his brother Jacob is described as being a mild-mannered man. So these two are one of the first examples of the narrative trope of brains versus brawn. Jacob is reluctant to give Esau some of this stew, but Esau presses further, and Jacob eventually gives in and says, "Fine, I'll give you some stew if you give it to me for your birthright." Because remember, Esau is the firstborn, and in the biblical tradition, the firstborn has the larger inheritance and the larger blessing from their father. So Esau finally gives in and says, "Fine, you can have my birthright, just give me some of that stew." Jacob gives him some of the stew, but he got it for Esau's birthright. He tricked his brother out of it. Years later, their father Isaac is on his deathbed, and he's going blind in his old age. And he's preparing to give his blessing to his sons before he dies. But before he does that, he asks his son Esau if he would go out and hunt some wild game for him and cook it up just the way that he likes it. Esau obliges, and he heads out into the fields. Isaac's wife Rebekah overhears this and hatches up a plan in order to give Jacob the blessing that she believes he deserves based on what God told her all those years ago, how the younger will be over the older. Her idea is to have Jacob dress in Esau's clothing, and she will prepare food for him that Esau would have prepared for Isaac, and so Jacob will pretend to be Esau and receive the blessing of the firstborn. Jacob, according to Jewish tradition, is a little reluctant to do this, and he gives the excuse to Rebekah that he is not like Esau physically. Esau is a very hairy man. So, Rebekah has Jacob go and kill one of the goats from the flocks and wear its skin on his hands and neck and any exposed skin to give the appearance that he is a hairy man. Jacob goes into his father's tent with the food his mother prepared and dressed in Esau's clothes and with goat skin on his skin to make him appear hairy in order to look like Esau. Isaac at first is questioning if this is Esau, but Jacob says to him, "I am Esau, and I have brought you the food you have asked." Isaac's a little surprised at how Esau was able to hunt something and cook it up and prepare it so fast. But Jacob says, "The Lord granted me success." After having the food and being with his son Jacob, pretending to be Esau, Isaac gives the blessing to Jacob that was intended for Esau. And once again, Jacob has tricked his older brother Esau out of his firstborn rights. Esau returns back to the tent with the food ready to prepare it, but sees that Jacob has already been given the blessing. He rushes into his father Isaac's tent and demands to know what happened. It's then that Isaac realizes that he just gave the blessing to Jacob. Esau demands that Isaac, "Please give me a blessing, you have to have something left." Isaac gives Esau a blessing, but it's not the one that was intended for him. Esau becomes enraged at Jacob for doing this. Now twice, his brother has stolen what was rightfully his, and here is how Esau responds. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." These two acts of deceptions from Jacob have now caused chaos between these two brothers, and as we go through the rest of the story, we're hoping to see how order is brought back to this. Rebekah hears how upset Esau is towards Jacob and how he plans to kill him soon. So Rebekah tells Jacob to flee back to her home country, back to Haran for safety until this whole thing blows over. Jacob makes it back to Haran, and he meets a young woman there named Rachel, and he falls madly in love with her. So he goes to meet Rachel's father, Laban, and Jacob proposes a deal with Laban, that he will work for Laban for 7 years in his flocks, and then after those 7 years, he will take Rachel as his wife. Laban agrees, and Jacob gets to work, and the Bible describes it like this, that the 7 years for Jacob went by very fast because of the love that he had for Rachel. They went by like no time went by at all. But after those 7 years of service to Laban, on the wedding night, Laban switches out the bride for Rachel's older sister, Leah, and Jacob marries Leah instead of Rachel. When Jacob finds out that this is Leah and not Rachel, he demands from Laban that he give him what he is owed. But Laban says this. Laban said, "It is not so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn." The narrative parallel here is not so obvious on the surface, but if we look at it a little deeper, we're going to notice something really cool about this narrative parallel. Remember what just happened with Jacob and Esau? How Jacob took Esau's birthright and his firstborn blessing? Jacob was set to marry the younger sister, but Laban replaced her with the older sister. And looking at the way Laban says this, it seems more like Laban is just observing a local custom. But when we look back at that story that just happened with Jacob and Esau, and now how Laban has switched the brides out for the older sister, in a way, it's like Laban is telling Jacob, "I know what you did with your brother, and we don't do that here." And thus, the trickster has been out-tricked. Jacob accepts the consequences of his actions and the terms of Laban, and agrees to work for Laban 7 more years in order to marry Rachel. Time goes by, and Jacob and Leah have many children together, but Rachel is left barren, and she becomes jealous of her older sister Leah because she cannot bear children. Jacob is planning to take him and his family out of Haran and come back to the land of Canaan, so he plans another ruse. Jacob has been working for Laban at this point for over 20 years, and he's expanded Laban's flocks with many new calves and new members. And they had a deal, remember, that when Jacob was done, he would take what was rightfully his. So that's what Jacob does. He takes the part of the flocks that he has curated over the last 20 years, takes his wives and his children with him back to Canaan, and they escape under the cover of darkness. But Laban finds out about this from his servants, that Jacob has stolen from him. But Laban believes that Jacob has stolen everything from Laban. Laban chases Jacob back down to Canaan and eventually catches up with him. But Jacob explains to Laban, "These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock." Notice how Jacob says, "your flock." Jacob didn't take anything that was Laban's. He only took what was his that he had curated over the last 20 years and agreed to take from Laban when they departed. So after explaining this little misunderstanding, Laban and Jacob part ways with a truce. Now we get to the most important part in the story of Jacob, and it is my favorite part of the story of Jacob. Once they get back into the land of Canaan, Esau finds out that Jacob has returned, and he finds out where he is, and he's looking to make due on that promise he made all those years ago, that one day he will kill Jacob for stealing his birthright. Jacob finds out that Esau is on his way to kill him, so in order to spare his family, Jacob splits his camp into 2 sections, so that in case Esau found one, he would only kill that half and Jacob wouldn't lose everything. After splitting the camp, Jacob and his family make a run for it, again under the cover of darkness. But as they're making a break for it, Jacob encounters a mysterious figure who is never directly named in the Bible. Now there are many theories as to who this figure might be. Could it be Esau himself? Could it be Esau's guardian angel? Or could it be God himself? Many traditional teachings teach that this was God wrestling with Jacob. Jacob and this mysterious figure enter into an all-night wrestling match with each other. Punches are being thrown, kicks are being done, shoves are being pushed. At one point, Jacob even has his hip dislocated by this figure. They fight all night until sunrise, and Jacob gets him into a hold, and the man says, "Then he said, 'Let me go, for the day has broken.' But Jacob said, 'I will not let you go until you bless me.'" Jacob receives a blessing from this man, who we believe to be God himself, and the blessing that he gives to Jacob is a new name, Israel. Why is this important? We talked about last episode how names carry meaning throughout the Bible, and a change in a name is not just a change in what people will call you, but is a change in your destiny. So what's Jacob's new destiny? Well, let's look at his new name, Israel, and what it means. It means he who wrestles with God and man and prevails. No longer is Jacob called the trickster. He is now the man who wrestles with God and man and prevails. His life is changed. His destiny has been changed. No more is that old life of the trickster going to be how Jacob lives. Now he walks with God, and thanks to that dislocated hip, he not only physically walks differently, but even spiritually walks differently after this encounter with God. The morning breaks and Jacob is face to face with his brother Esau. Jacob fully expects that Esau is going to kill him, but now Jacob has a new destiny. He's going to be bringing order from chaos, and here's what happens next. Instead of Esau rushing in with a sword to kill his brother, Esau comes with arms open wide and hugs his brother. The brothers are reunited. The feud that has been going on for the last 20 years is over. Esau gets to meet his sisters-in-laws and his nephews, and Jacob the same gets to meet all of Esau's family. The two are back together again, and there is no hard feelings between the two. Order has been created from chaos. Like and subscribe for part 4.